Hi, I'm Shira Karpel.
And I'm Shayna Gaunt, and we're board-certified behavior analysts. At How to ABA, we provide practical resources, community, and support to ABA professionals. In each episode of our podcast, we will be having real conversations with real people, sharing real stories about ABA.
We'll share relevant strategies and actionable tips that will make us all better ABA practitioners. It's the ABA content you need that you're not going to learn in a textbook.
Hi, Shira.
Hi, everyone. I am Shira, one half of How to ABA. And when Shayna and I got together, we did not plan that both of our names start with SH. That was just a coincidence. So I'm really excited to be doing this podcast. We're really excited to be able to present some of the community members that are going to be coming on. But I guess it starts with us. So today I'm going to be sharing my journey, how I got into the field, my experience with ABA, and kind of how to ABA came into existence. So I had a bit of a non-straight path into the field. I had no idea what ABA was. I had no idea what a BCBA was. I was very interested in working with kids and doing something in the field of early intervention. And at the time, my choices were physical therapy, occupational therapy, and I think nursing was one of my options. I actually started a physical therapy program. And I was just like, this is not for me. At the time I was living in New York and I didn't know that this existed, but somebody then told me that, oh, you can work with young kids and doing early intervention by getting just a master's in special education. So I was like, great, I'll get a master's in special education. And it was actually a nice short master's that I could do in the summers because I was working during the year. So I did it in the summer. And at the time I had one child. He was very young. He was a baby. I couldn't commit to much. But I was, committed to getting my master's. And after that, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was at the time living in Israel and I completed it partly online, partly in person. And then we're moving back to the States and I actually lived in Texas. And then again, I had no idea what ABA was, didn't even know where to look. And I had this master's in early childhood education. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to be a teacher. And I was never really motivated to be a teacher. It wasn't something that I was really looking for. But I started off as being an assistant. And within 2 weeks of me starting as an assistant, my first experience in the classroom, the main teacher quit. And so I was thrown into the role of the main teacher and I was totally unprepared. And I almost look back on that knowing now what I didn't know then is like, somewhat embarrassing. So I became the main teacher and I was working with kids who were probably about 4 years old, which I love. I love that age group. And I remember having a couple kids who just weren't getting it. They weren't really fitting in, but they didn't really have a diagnosis either. They were just like, I couldn't reach them. I couldn't get to them. They were those kids who were going to fall through the cracks. And I tried. I know I remember we had a consulting psychologist and I would talk to the parents. And at the time I was like I was in my early 20s. Like, who was I to really say that there was something going on with this kid? But the professionals couldn't help me either. And I felt, really lost. I wanted to be able to help more of the kids and more of the students. And so after living in Texas for a couple of years and teaching for a couple of years, I ended up moving back to Toronto. And I had a family member who actually went through ABA. And so I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And so they connected me actually with Shayna and they said, why don't I connect you? She's a great resource in the field. I called her before I even came to Toronto and, she gave me a ton of information and was like, I don't know you. So good luck. Here's what you need to know about the field. And I was like, great, thanks. And so I came back to Toronto and I was willing to volunteer. I spent a lot of months volunteering. At this point, I think I was pregnant with my second kid. So it was very hard for me to even commit to a long-term job. Sorry, I was pregnant with my third kid. And after my daughter was born, I was like really aggressive about finding a job in the field. And I ended up finding a parent who hired me through some job board. And again, little did I know, I knew nothing about the field at the time. And one of my first few times meeting with the family, Shayna was actually the consulting therapist on the team. And I was like, great, here we are. What a small world. And we worked together for a little while, and then, Shayna presented to me the option of like, why don't you get a BCBA? At the time, I only had a master's in education. I didn't even know, that I didn't even dream that far ahead. I was just so busy. I had 3 little kids. My daughter was less than 1. I was so overwhelmed with life at that time. I just moved to Toronto, and I was like, can I really do this? And I started my courses towards my BCBA. Shayna really gave me the opportunity to like continue to work with her throughout my coursework. So I was working while doing my coursework, while having my 3 little children. I wouldn't recommend those few years to anyone. I wouldn't do it over again.
At the time, you had 3 kids under the age of 5.
Yes, they were very little.
And you were doing your BCBA coursework and you were working. I just wanted to put that into perspective for everyone.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people we've spoken to, have a similar journey. It's not easy, and it's not meant to be easy, but there was always like a light at the end of the tunnel. And there was always something on the other side that made it worthwhile. And at the time, that was really all I knew. And I was just willing to do it because I knew that I needed to. Like I needed to do the most that I could do for myself, for my clients, for my kids. And that was my motivation at the time. And I did it. Like I got my BCBA, and that was probably 2014 when I got my BCBA. And I started, continuing to consult. Mostly home-based was, I would say, like where I spent most of my time, which was great for me. Having little kids, I was able to make my own schedule. I worked for myself. So I, canceled if I needed, not canceled, but I arranged my schedule based on my kids' schedules. My days weren't usually full packed. I didn't work full time at that point. And it really worked for me. And then, after a couple of years of working with Shayna, we worked together that entire time. I was just always in awe of her ability to write these programs, and that, we kind of amassed this, what we call the drive of just materials and resources and programs. And we said, like, this really should be shared. It was so hard for me to get into the field and figure things out. I did have Shayna, and I did have support, and I had people supporting me. But I remember that feeling of not knowing anything and like just being so overwhelmed. And, that first data sheet that I wrote, and us going back and forth with you editing it and improving it. And I was like, how did you know that? And why, like, we don't have to do that every time. So that's where How to ABA kind of was born. It was this idea of taking all these resources that we've collected over the years and sharing them and putting them in a way where we can disseminate them to other professionals, so that our fellow professionals can benefit, but also the clients can benefit. Like, we know how pressed for time we are and how hard and overwhelming our schedules can be. So if we could all just, pool our resources and work together, it only benefits, our clients and our kids. And so we started How to ABA in 2017. And it's our main site is our blog and our website. And we also have our membership community where people can really, they're members with one purchase, and they get everything, all of us. You get all of our resources, CEUs, everything that we've collected over the years in the field is available to our members. And we're just really excited to be able to share and contribute to the field. Looking back and having come so far and having learned so much and still having so much to learn, really just being able to have a place that we can give back and disseminate and support other people has been really great.
And Shira, you mentioned, that we had this drive that we had created with millions, probably not millions, hundreds of programs though, and program materials that go with that and everything else. And, when you started working with me, you'd had other experience as well. But, you said something to me that said, Shayna, you've got a really unique way of thinking. And I just went, what? Huh? I do? Because it was just something that I just did. I just did, came and created programs, and then those programs built up into other programs, et cetera. And then, when you and I started How to ABA, we really did that because we were talking and saying, nobody out there seems to share. How come everybody needs to reinvent the wheel every single time? Surely, there's got to be another prepositions program that exists that, looks like yours. Like like somebody else has taught attributes before. Why is everybody so secretive, and why do we all need to do this? And I think that's how, we started How to ABA, was really for that, and saying, listen, like, we want to share our resources and we should become a community, because it can definitely be lonely out there, especially when you first get your BCBA and don't know what you're doing or don't know where to start, at least, right?
One of the things that I loved about how you trained me and how the programs work was that non-cookie cutter approach to ABA. And I think a lot of the things that are out there are based on this, like, big, large, heavy curriculum that someone somewhere created that you can kind of print and use as a template. But no two kids with autism are the same, and no situations are the same. And without being able to think outside of the box, we're really not doing our kids, a good service. So I think it was that the fact that the programs are so dynamic and so, not cookie cutter, and really not based on, this whole concept of just using templates and photocopying and just having them all look the same, was really something that I thought everybody needed to know about, and it's all about the materials coming from the professionals who are practicing. And I think a lot of the stuff that we get is from the people who are researching and writing journals, and the people who are not really like on the grounds, having the experiences. And what I love about the behavior resource is that if me or Shayna are working somewhere and we have this case and we're writing something, and I'm like, you know what, this is great, it worked for my student, I'm going to share it. And so that it's really like this dynamic resource that keeps growing as we encounter new situations and as we, find new ways to solve problems.
And Shira, we got off topic a little bit, but you said that you were a consultant. You finished your story with, I was a consultant in making my own hours. But tell people what you do now, because I think it's super fascinating.
So what I do now is, what I'm really passionate about is, back to when I was a teacher. I guess there was something about teaching that really stuck with me, because what I love is now combining the teaching and education with ABA. So what I do now is I'm director of behavioral services for an organization that is essentially a school. We also do clinic services and respite camp, those types of programs. But it's a private school. So we've had the luxury of being able to really like merge ABA and education. ABA happens in all of the classrooms. Most of the staff at this point are ABA trained. We have a couple of BCBAs who run classrooms. And to me, it's so exciting, having come from a background where ABA kind of happens in someone's home in a vacuum. And then we had that. It was such a challenge then transition this child back into school or back into regular life, or consult with the teachers who didn't want to hear anything about ABA. And what I love about what I'm doing now is really giving kids like a comprehensive experience. We work with the OTs, PT, speech, teachers, parents, really looking at the big picture of how we can support the child. And I love that ABA can play a role in that and in this child's greater educational experience.
I love that. Throughout your journey, Shira, what would you say, besides raising 3 kids under the age of 5, what would you say your biggest obstacle would be in this field?
So I definitely struggled with like imposter syndrome. I think that coming into the field, I practiced, or, I was doing a lot of supervision work or consultants work before I even had my BCBA. And I think I always just didn't feel confident enough. I thought, like, who am I? Like, why would they listen to me? And I didn't have the confidence to believe that I really, did know what I was talking about. And what I kind of learned is it's not even necessarily that I had to pass the exam or have the degree or have the experience. Sometimes like I just had to realize, like, I know what I'm talking about. Like, some people just have, good intuition or good instincts about this. And I had to trust my own. And I had to realize that I did know what I was talking about, and not get caught up in that imposter syndrome.
So what advice would you give to a newly minted BCBA? Would that be it? Don't get caught up in that?
Yeah, I think that that's part of it. I think also what I would say is Have people around you, like create that community for yourself where you can continue to learn from. I think part of feeling like an imposter is that if you're all alone and you really have nobody there to rely on, you doubt yourself. So I think have people that you can rely on. It's not just about passing the exam. That learning doesn't end there. It's a shame that supervision ends there, but I think we have to feel like we're getting ongoing supervision and ongoing learning. So don't think that now you know everything just because you passed the exam.
Yeah, that's huge. That okay, I ticked that box. I studied forever, and now I never need to pick up a journal article again. Is the wrong approach to ABA professionals, right? You constantly learning, constantly reading things, constantly, learning from each other as well is what we need to do. Um, in this field, things are changing quite dramatically, which I love. If there was one thing you could change about the field, what would that be?
I think that ABA needs to, I think we're doing better with it not happening just in a vacuum and it not just being ABA. But I think if ABA could be more common, like it wasn't just like, oh, my kid's in ABA therapy, so they'll do ABA and I won't. But I think parents have to be more on board. It has to be more doable.
Cohesive.
Yeah, and more like relevant to like so that teachers wouldn't feel intimidated by it and parents aren't intimidated by it. And it's not just something that like, oh, this kid is doing ABA. So when he's with me for these 3 hours, he's doing ABA. And then in the rest of his life, like, we've kind of thrown that out the window. So I'd love for the field to be less intimidating and more doable so that more people felt like it was relevant to them, that parents were more on board, that we had a way of reaching more of the people that have an impact in people's lives so that it was more of a comprehensive thing and it wasn't just happening in a clinic in isolation.
So true. And, for ABA to be effective, everybody needs to be consistent and, it should be a comprehensive approach and probably a multidisciplinary approach as well. But, traditionally, a lot of ABA people have been very, technical when they're explaining things, and that can scare a lot of people. So, I hear what you're saying just in terms of making things, just a lot more friendly. We pair ourselves with reinforcement when we work with, new students. But as professionals, we don't always pair ourselves with other professionals or with other parents. So that's a huge takeaway point.
And the other thing I would say is that I think a lot of times people think of ABA as like that one-to-one DTT tabletop, like dry style. And I think that if the field could represent itself as more, like the way that we do ABA is it's in a classroom, like there's kids who they may benefit from one-to-one, but you know what, they're going to learn how to do this in a group setting. And that's still ABA. And some kids may not need the one-to-one, or they may get too attached to the one-to-one, or their parents are too dependent on the one-to-one. When in reality, if we can broaden the scope of ABA and say any of these things are ABA, and by you attending this program or working in this style, it's not just about sitting at a table and, learning drills, but there's so many different ways that we can broaden our scope of ABA.
Absolutely. Such a great point. What's the best advice anyone's ever given you?
So to piggyback on Shayna's session, one of the things that sticks in my mind is, Shayna used to always say to me, like, fake it till you make it. And that was, back when I was like super intimidated, feeling like, who am I to tell people what to do, and feeling that imposter syndrome. And it wasn't in a bad way. Like, I don't think that I didn't know what I was talking about. It was just a confidence thing. And I think by hearing like, it's okay. Like, even if you don't have all the answers, pretend you do. Like, just have the confidence to make people think that because you could be saying the same thing. And if you say it in a unsure, like unconfident, kind of like nervous way, or if you say the same thing in a confident, assured, like, strong way, you're going to make people just feel a lot safer if you feel confident. So it's not just about the message that you're giving, it's how you're giving it. So I think that was probably the best thing that helped me overcome that and helped me feel assured in how I'm giving over messages.
Amazing. And what practical advice would you want to share with others besides that?
I think just be open-minded, like be open to learning from everywhere and anywhere. Don't think that we know it all. There's so many resources out there. try them, learn from them, and don't pigeonhole yourself into like, this is how it's been done and this is how I'm going to do it and this is ABA and all I allow myself is this one little window of ABA. There's just so much we can learn from other fields, from being a little creative and innovative with the field. So yeah, be ready to do that.
Awesome. Thank you. One last question, just in terms of your favorite ABA go-to resource besides How to ABA.
Well, obviously, my drive is a lifesaver. I love direct instruction. It's one of my favorite things. I think especially with like that, merge into the classroom, I find that it's so applicable and so relevant. I do all the direct.
You're talking about Siegfried Engelman, the SRA, Language for Learning, Reading Mastery.
Yep. I love those. And I think also just get some fun toys, like just be fun, have the kids really want to like be with you, and play with you and just be prepared for that. Otherwise, like I was, having this conversation earlier with someone where it doesn't have to be fancy to work. Like ABA can work with, a couple notepads and some sticky notes and, a couple flashcards. Like you don't really need lots of fancy things for good ABA. Good ABA really has to be fun and doable. And we want to see progress.
I remember when I first met you, Shira, so you told your side of the story. When I walked into the client's place and, they introduced me to this brand new therapist, her name sounded really familiar. And then as we got talking, I'm like, wait a second, I know exactly who this is because we had a conversation on the phone or a couple conversations on the phone. But I remember you had your big bag of toys and you had this really cool toy and it was like a spinny top and it lit up and it made noise. And you were so fun and you were one of the best therapists that I've ever worked with. And I could watch you in session all day long because you're just fun. And you've got all these toys in your bag. Like you're seriously like the mom with like everything but the kitchen sink in your bag. And, I think I said, where did you get those toys? And you just went, the dollar store, like, where else would I get them from? And, every single time you just pulled out something different and it was so fun to watch you and you were just so engaging. And I knew, you said right away, like, I got to work with her. I knew right away I needed to work with you as well. So.
And we lived happily ever after. My kids still joke that I used to take their toys all the time and like they would never come back. But no, my kids were like also the best resource because what they thought was fun, like obviously my clients were going to think was fun. So I would take all their best stuff.
Absolutely. Why do you think I know Paw Patrol so well? And why do you think I can recite Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and all those other ones? Okay. So anyway, Shira, thank you. I was going to say it's really great getting to know you, but gosh, I've known you for years, so I really can't say that.
Anything that you learned about me, or did you already know all of that?
I actually could listen to, your journeys forever, like where you've lived and all of that kind of stuff. I still love listening to the fact that you've lived in so many different places and your experiences there.
Yeah. And I think it's really, made me who I am today, right? I've lived in 4 different countries, 3 different cities. Toronto is where I am right now. But yeah, it's really taught me a lot.
Awesome. So, well, I look forward to doing these podcasts. And, like we said, it was super intimidating to start this, but we're now on episode number 3 and we got through it. So stay tuned for more. I'm really excited.
Yay. We're doing it. It's happening. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks for joining today's conversation. Wherever you get your podcast, please go and subscribe, rate, and review so others can find out about us too.
For more from How to ABA, including free resources and ABA materials, visit our blog at howtoaba.com. And make sure that you're following us on social media for more practical tips and updates.